Hey everyone, first time posting here. I've seen stories from Reddit on TikTok and never thought I'd be sharing one myself. I guess I need to get this off my chest and maybe get some advice. So, here's my story. I'm 34M. My wife, let's call her Emma, is 31F, and we've been married for 7 years. We don't have kids, just our dog Max, who's always been like our baby. We've had a pretty solid relationship, or so I thought. Things started to change about 6 months ago when Emma decided to get in shape. We both gained a bit of weight during the pandemic, and she was really committed to losing it. She joined a new gym nearby and even hired a personal trainer, Mark, who seemed like a nice guy. Emma's transformation was incredible. She lost weight, got toned, and honestly, she looked better than ever. I was proud of her and happy she was doing something that made her feel good. Little did I know that change was just the beginning of the nightmare I was about to walk into. Emma started spending more time at the gym and less time at home. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was enthusiastic about her workouts and would talk endlessly about the new exercises Mark was teaching her. I even joked that Mark was getting more of her attention than I was. She'd laugh it off, but something about her laughter seemed different. Forced, maybe. I shrugged it off as my imagination. Then, there were the late-night texts. Emma said they were from a group chat with her gym friends. I didn't pry because I trusted her. But one night, she left her phone on the counter while she went to shower, and it buzzed. I glanced at the screen and saw Mark's name. The message preview read, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." My heart sank. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I waited until she got out of the shower and casually asked about her gym plans for the next day. She mentioned a group class and said Mark would be there to guide them. I didn't mention the text, but the seed of doubt was planted. Things got worse from there. Emma started dressing nicer for the gym, wearing makeup even though she used to go barefaced. She seemed distant, often preoccupied with her phone, and less interested in spending time with me. Our sex life, which had always been great, dwindled to almost nothing. When we did have sex, it felt like she was somewhere else entirely. A couple of weeks ago, I had a business trip scheduled. I was supposed to be gone for 3 days. Emma seemed almost too happy about it, telling me how she would miss me, but also how she was looking forward to some alone time. That struck me as odd. Who looks forward to being alone that much? Anyway, I went on my trip, but my mind kept wandering back to Emma and Mark. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. On the second day of my trip, my meeting got canceled, and I decided to come home early to surprise Emma. I thought maybe we could spend some quality time together, try to reconnect. I didn't tell her I was coming back. I wanted it to be a surprise. And a surprise it was. Just not the kind I was hoping for. When I got home, I noticed Mark's car in our driveway. It was a flashy sports car, hard to miss. My heart started pounding in my chest. I walked up to the house, trying to stay calm, but my hands were shaking. I quietly unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was eerily quiet, except for some faint music coming from upstairs. I walked towards the sound, my stomach in knots. I took out my phone and started recording. I had a feeling I would need evidence of whatever I was about to find. As I reached the top of the stairs, I saw a trail of clothes, Mark's and Emma's, leading to our bedroom. My heart was racing, and I felt a mix of rage, sadness, and disbelief. I approached the bedroom door, which was slightly ajar, and pushed it open. What I saw confirmed my worst fears. Emma was on the bed, tangled in the sheets with Mark. They were so engrossed in each other they didn't even notice me standing there, recording everything. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Finally, I flipped on the lights. Emma and Mark jumped apart, both looking shocked and guilty. Emma's face went pale and she started to cry. Mark scrambled to cover himself, looking panicked. "Didn't expect me, did you?" I said, my voice shaking with anger. Mark tried to speak, but I cut him off. "Get out of my house," I growled. He hesitated, so I repeated myself, louder this time. "Get out!" Mark grabbed his clothes and bolted out of the room, not even bothering to put them on properly. I followed him to the front door, making sure he left. Then I went back upstairs to face Emma. She was still on the bed, clutching the sheets to her chest, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." I laughed bitterly. "A mistake? How long has this mistake been going on, Emma?" She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "A few months," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "But it didn't mean anything. I swear I love you." Love? You call this love? I shouted, gesturing towards the bed. You betrayed me, Emma. You lied to me. You disrespected our marriage, and for what? For some cheap thrill with your trainer? She started to cry harder, but I couldn't find it in myself to comfort her. I felt numb, like I was watching everything happen from outside my body. I don't know what to do, I said, more to myself than to her. I can't even look at you right now. I'll do anything to make it right, she pleaded. Please, we can fix this. I shook my head. I don't think we can, Emma. I really don't. You need to pack a bag and leave. I need time to think. She begged and pleaded, but I stood my ground. Eventually, she got dressed and started packing a suitcase. Watching her move around the room, so familiar yet now a stranger, was surreal. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I held it together. Once she was gone, the house felt emptier than ever. I sat down on the couch and replayed the video I had recorded, trying to process everything. How could she do this to me? To us? I kept asking myself over and over. I thought about calling my parents or my best friend, but I couldn't bear to tell anyone yet. It felt too raw, too embarrassing. Instead, I poured myself a drink and sat in silence, letting the reality of what had just happened sink in. My mind was a mess of anger, sadness, and confusion. How do you move forward when your whole world has been shattered in an instant? I didn't have any answers, and I wasn't sure I ever would. So here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet, hoping for some advice or at least some understanding. What do I do now? How do I pick up the pieces and move on from this betrayal? Any advice would be appreciated. Thanks for listening. Thanks for all the support and advice on my last post. I'm still trying to process everything and figure out my next steps. It's been a few days since I caught Emma with Mark, and things have been a whirlwind. I haven't spoken to Emma since that night. She's been staying at her sister's place, but she's been blowing up my phone with calls and texts, begging for another chance. I haven't responded to any of them. I can't. I don't even know where to start. The day after I found out, I called my best friend Dave. We've been friends since college, and he's always been someone I could count on. I told him everything, from the suspicious texts to walking in on Emma and Mark. Dave was furious on my behalf. He came over right away and just sat with me while I vented. I needed that. Sometimes just having someone listen can be a huge relief. Man, you don't deserve this, Dave said, shaking his head. You've always been good to her. I can't believe she did this to you. I know, I replied, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. I thought we were happy. I don't know where it all went wrong. Maybe it's not about you, Dave suggested. Sometimes people just make shitty decisions. It's on her, not you. Dave's words gave me some comfort, but they didn't erase the pain. I spent the next few days in a daze, going through the motions at work and avoiding my coworkers as much as possible. I didn't want to have to explain the dark circles under my eyes or why I seemed so out of it. My boss noticed, though, and called me into her office. Is everything okay, Jake? She asked, her eyes filled with concern. You don't seem like yourself lately. I hesitated, debating whether to tell her the truth. In the end, I decided to be honest. I'm going through some personal stuff, I admitted. I found out my wife has been cheating on me. Her expression softened, and she gave me a sympathetic look. I'm so sorry to hear that. If you need to take some time off, just let me know. Your work can wait. Thanks, I appreciate that, I said, grateful for her understanding. But taking time off didn't feel right. I needed the distraction of work to keep my mind off things. After work, I drove home, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I decided it was time to do something about the situation. Ignoring Emma's messages and calls wasn't going to solve anything. I needed to start dealing with this mess. I sat down with a glass of whiskey and opened my phone. There were dozens of unread texts from Emma, all variations of "I'm sorry" and "please talk to me." I scrolled through them, my anger flaring up again. How could she think a few words could fix this? But then I saw one message that caught my eye. It was from her sister, Karen. Jake, can we talk? I think we need to discuss what's going on. Karen and I had always gotten along well. She was the one who introduced me to Emma, and she'd always been like a sister to me. I decided to call her back. She picked up on the first ring. Jake, I'm so glad you called, she said. I've been worried about you. Yeah, well, I'm not doing great, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't know how to deal with this. Can we meet up and talk? She asked. I think there are some things you need to know. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop the next morning. When I arrived, Karen was already there, looking anxious. She gave me a hug and we sat down with our drinks. "I'm so sorry for what happened," she said, her eyes filled with genuine regret. "I can't believe Emma did this. It's not like her." "Well, she did," I replied bitterly. "I walked in on them, Karen, in our bed." "I know, and it's unforgivable," she said. "But there's more to it than you think. Emma's been really struggling lately. She's been seeing a therapist for a few months." That was news to me. Emma had never mentioned therapy. "Why didn't she tell me?" I asked, feeling a mix of anger and confusion. "She didn't want to worry you," Karen explained. "She said she was feeling lost and didn't know how to talk to you about it. But that doesn't excuse what she did. I just thought you should know." I didn't know what to think. Part of me felt a tiny sliver of sympathy for Emma, but it was overshadowed by the betrayal. "I don't know if I can ever forgive her," I said, my voice breaking. "How do I move past this?" Karen reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You don't have to decide anything right now," she said gently. "Take your time. Do what's right for you." After our conversation, I felt a bit lighter. It didn't change what Emma had done, but knowing she was struggling too made me see things in a slightly different light. Not enough to forgive her, but enough to consider talking to her. That evening, I decided it was time to have a conversation with Emma. I needed answers, and I couldn't get them by avoiding her. I texted her to come over the next day, and she responded almost immediately, agreeing to meet. The next day, I sat on the couch, my heart pounding as I waited for Emma to arrive. When she walked through the door, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she had lost weight. It was clear she was suffering too. "Jake," she said softly, her voice trembling. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." I nodded, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I need answers, Emma. I need to understand why you did this." She sat down across from me, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know where to start," she said, her voice breaking. "I never meant to hurt you." "Then why?" I demanded. "Why did you cheat on me? Why with him?" Emma took a deep breath, struggling to compose herself. "It started out as just a distraction," she admitted. "I was feeling lost and empty, and Mark was there. He made me feel good about myself. It was never supposed to go this far." "Feeling good about yourself?" I asked, incredulous. "What about us? What about our marriage?" "I know, and I hate myself for it," she sobbed. "I know I betrayed you and I can't take it back. But please, believe me when I say it didn't mean anything. I love you, Jake." I felt a surge of anger. "Love? You call this love? Sneaking around behind my back lying to me? That's not love, Emma." "I know," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just want you to know how sorry I am." I looked at her, my heart aching. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," I said quietly, "but I need time to think. You need to leave." Emma nodded, tears still streaming down her face. She stood up and walked to the door, pausing to look back at me. "I'll give you all the time you need," she said softly. "I just hope one day we can find a way to move past this." After she left, I sat there for a long time trying to process everything. I knew I had a long road ahead of me, and I didn't know what the future held. But for now, I needed to take things one day at a time. So here I am again, reaching out to you all for advice. How do I even begin to heal from this? Should I consider trying to work things out with Emma, or is it time to move on? I'm lost, and any advice would be appreciated. Thanks for listening. Thanks for all the advice and support on my last posts. It's been a rough few weeks, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything. After talking to Emma and hearing her side of the story, I decided to take a step back and figure out what I really want. I needed to clear my head, so I took a few days off work and drove out to my parents' cabin in the woods. It's a place I've always gone to when I need to think, and right now, I need all the clarity I can get. The first night at the cabin, I sat by the fireplace with Max, my dog, and a bottle of whiskey. I replayed everything in my mind. The moment I caught Emma with Mark, the confrontation, and our conversation. It still felt surreal, like I was living someone else's life. How did we get here? We were supposed to be happy, to build a life together. But now, all I could see were the shattered pieces of our marriage. The next morning, I decided to go for a hike. There's something about being in nature that always helps me clear my mind. As I walked through the forest, I tried to focus on the sounds of the birds and the rustling leaves, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Emma. I kept asking myself if I could ever trust her again. Could we ever rebuild what we had? Or was it all too broken to fix? When I got back to the cabin, I found a message from Dave on my phone. He was checking in on me, making sure I was okay. I called him back and we talked for a while. He reminded me that I didn't have to make any decisions right away. "Take your time," he said. "Figure out what you need. We're here for you, no matter what you decide." Later that day, I got a call from my lawyer. I had asked him to look into my options regarding the divorce. He had some news for me, and it wasn't good. Apparently, Emma had already started moving money from our joint account into her personal account. She was covering her tracks, making sure she had enough to support herself if things went south. I felt a new wave of anger and betrayal. It wasn't enough that she cheated on me. Now she was trying to take our money too. "Don't worry," my lawyer said. "We'll get this sorted out. But you need to be careful. She's planning for a fight." I thanked him and hung up, feeling more lost than ever. How did we go from planning our future together to this? I poured myself another drink and sat on the porch, staring out at the trees. I couldn't help but wonder what Emma was thinking. Was she truly sorry, or was she just trying to save face? Did she even care about our marriage, or was she only looking out for herself? The next day, I decided to head back to the city. I needed to talk to Emma again, to confront her about the money and get some answers. When I got home, the house felt empty and cold. Emma wasn't there, and I realized she had taken more of her things. I found a note on the kitchen counter. "Jake, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. I'm staying at Karen's for now. I just need some space to think. Please don't shut me out. We can get through this. I love you. Emma." I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Her words felt hollow, like a desperate attempt to hold on to something that was already gone. I took a deep breath and called Karen. She picked up after a few rings. "Hey, Jake," she said, her voice cautious. "How are you holding up?" "Not great," I admitted. "I need to talk to Emma. Can you let her know I'm coming over?" There was a pause on the other end. "Are you sure that's a good idea? She's pretty shaken up." "I need answers, Karen. I can't keep living in limbo." "Okay," she said softly. "I'll tell her. But please, go easy on her." I hung up and drove to Karen's place, my mind racing. When I arrived, Emma was waiting for me on the porch. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept in days. We sat down, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. I could see the regret in her eyes, but it wasn't enough to erase the pain. "Why did you do it, Emma?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously. "I don't know," she said, tears welling up. "I was feeling lost and empty. Mark made me feel alive." "And you thought sleeping with him would fix that?" I asked, my anger simmering just below the surface. "No," she said, shaking her head. "It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. I know that now. I don't know how to fix this." "You can start by explaining why you've been moving our money," I said, my voice hardening. "Were you planning to run off with him?" Her eyes widened in shock. "No, I would never do that. I was just scared. I didn't know what was going to happen, and I wanted to make sure I had enough to get by." "By taking our money?" I asked incredulously. "You didn't think to talk to me about it?" "I was going to," she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know how." I stood up, pacing the porch. "This is a mess, Emma. I don't know if we can come back from this." "Please, Jake," she begged. "I'll do anything to make it right. Just give me a chance." I looked at her, seeing the woman I had fallen in love with and the stranger she had become. "I need time," I said finally. "I don't know what I want right now." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I'll give you all the time you need." I left Karen's house feeling more confused than ever. Emma's words echoed in my mind, but I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. How do you forgive someone who has shattered your trust? How do you rebuild something that feels irreparably broken? The next few days were a blur. I went back to work, trying to focus on my job, but my mind kept drifting back to Emma. I talked to Dave almost every day, and he kept reminding me to take things one step at a time. My lawyer was working on the financial side of things, making sure Emma couldn't take any more money without my consent. One evening, as I was sitting on the couch with Max, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something told me to pick up. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Jake, it's Mark." My blood ran cold. What the hell do you want? I need to talk to you, he said, sounding desperate. Please, just hear me out. You've got 2 minutes, I said, my anger rising. I'm sorry, he began. I never meant for things to go this far. I'm an idiot and I know I've messed up your life. I need you to know that Emma loves you. She never stopped loving you. You think that makes this better? I snapped. You think that erases what you did? No, I know it doesn't, he said quickly. But I needed to tell you. I needed you to know that it wasn't just some fling for her. She's been a wreck since you found out. She's miserable without you. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. You don't get to play the hero here, Mark. You don't get to make this about you. I'm not, he said, his voice trembling. I just wanted to apologize for everything. I'll stay out of your lives. Just, please, give her a chance. I hung up without another word, my hands shaking. What was I supposed to do with that? Mark's words had stirred up emotions I wasn't ready to face. I poured myself another drink and sat in silence, trying to make sense of it all. Later that night, I found myself scrolling through old photos of Emma and me. We looked so happy, so in love. I couldn't reconcile those memories with the reality of what had happened. Part of me wanted to believe that we could find our way back to each other, but another part of me was too afraid to take that risk. I decided to call my therapist. I had started seeing her a few months ago when Emma first began acting distant. She had helped me navigate my feelings then, and I hoped she could help me now. Jake, it's good to hear from you, she said when she picked up. How are you holding up? Not great, I admitted. I don't know what to do. Emma wants another chance, but I don't know if I can give it to her. It's okay to feel conflicted, she said gently. You've been through a lot. Trust takes time to rebuild, and it's not something that can be rushed. What do you need right now? I need to figure out if I can ever trust her again, I said, my voice shaking. I don't want to make a decision I'll regret. Take your time, she advised. I'm back with what will probably be my final update. Thanks again for all the support and advice. It's been a tough journey, but I've finally reached a decision. Here's how it all unfolded. After my call with the therapist, I spent the next few days reflecting on everything that had happened. I tried to imagine a future with Emma and one without her. Both paths seemed daunting, filled with uncertainties and pain. I knew that no matter what I chose, there would be no easy answers. One evening, as I was sitting on the porch with Max, I got a text from Emma. Can we talk? I know you need time, but I'm hoping we can at least have a conversation. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Okay, come over tomorrow evening. The next day felt like an eternity. I went through the motions at work, barely able to focus. When I got home, I cleaned the house, maybe as a way to prepare myself for whatever was coming. At 7 p.m. sharp, Emma knocked on the door. She looked anxious but determined. We sat down in the living room, the silence between us heavy and charged. I've done a lot of thinking, she began, her voice trembling. And I know I've hurt you in ways I can't even begin to apologize for. I was selfish, and I took you for granted. There's no excuse for what I did, but I need you to know how deeply sorry I am. I nodded, trying to keep my emotions in check. I've been doing a lot of thinking too, I said. I still don't understand why you turned to Mark. Was our marriage really that unfulfilling for you? She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. It wasn't about our marriage. It was about me. I was struggling with feelings of inadequacy and emptiness. Mark was just a distraction. He made me feel good about myself in a way I didn't know I needed. But it was all a lie. I see that now. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. So where does that leave us? I asked quietly. I want to work on us, she said, her voice filled with determination. I've started seeing a therapist, and I'm committed to figuring out why I did what I did and how I can make sure it never happens again. I know it's asking a lot, but I hope you can find it in your heart to give me another chance. I looked at her, seeing the woman I had loved for so many years and the stranger she had become. Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight, I said. It takes time, and I'm not sure I can ever fully trust you again. But I'm willing to try, on one condition. Anything, she said, leaning forward. You need to move out for a while, I said firmly. We need space to heal and figure things out. We can go to counseling together, but I need you to give me some time to process everything without you here. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes. Over the next few weeks, we started counseling. It was hard, gut-wrenching work. We talked about the affair, our marriage, and the issues that had been brewing beneath the surface for years. There were days when I wanted to give up, when the pain seemed too much to bear. But there were also moments of hope, small glimpses of the love we once had. Emma moved in with her sister, and we took things one step at a time. I focused on my own healing, spending time with friends and doing things that brought me joy. I took Max on long walks, read books I had been meaning to get to, and even started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. One day, after a particularly intense counseling session, Emma and I went for a walk in the park. It felt almost like old times, but there was a new layer of understanding between us. "Do you think we'll ever be okay again?" she asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think we have a chance, and right now, that's enough for me." Months passed, and slowly we began to rebuild our relationship. It wasn't easy, and there were setbacks along the way. But with each step forward, we grew a little stronger. We learned to communicate better, to be more honest with each other and with ourselves. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch together, I looked over at Emma and realized that for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. "I think we're going to be okay," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. She smiled, reaching for my hand. "I think so too." The process of rebuilding trust was long and arduous, but it taught us both valuable lessons about ourselves and our relationship. We learned that love isn't just about the good times, but about weathering the storms together and coming out stronger on the other side. 1 year after the affair, we decided to renew our vows. It wasn't a grand ceremony, just a small gathering of close friends and family. As we stood there, promising to love and cherish each other anew, I felt a sense of hope and gratitude. We had been through hell, but we had come out on the other side, stronger and more resilient. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, know that it's okay to feel lost and unsure. Healing takes time, and there's no right or wrong way to go about it. Trust your instincts, take care of yourself, and don't be afraid to seek help. Whether you decide to rebuild your relationship or move on, know that you have the strength to get through it. Thank you all for listening and for your support. This journey has been one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through, but it's also been a journey of growth and healing. Take care, everyone.